We're back again today on Boylston Street at Lear, the local Irish pub at the heart of Boston. And what a guest we have today, one of the maddest guys I've known in my 6.5 years here in Boston, Adam Gibbs. It's great seeing you again.
Thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
So a lot of people won't know this, but we actually played together at Northeastern for a couple of years, but we'll get to that later. Just don't throw me under the bus with any of the stories. Nah, just kidding. Tell it what you want.
Absolutely.
So we'll start off. You grew up in Westboro, Mass. Tell us about life there. It's just right outside the city. It's a great city like Boston as well, just on your doorstep.
Yeah, so I grew up Westboro, Massachusetts. It's like about 30 minutes outside of Boston. Pretty small town. Went to Westboro High School. Played soccer there just for my freshman year because that was before DAP did a rule where you couldn't play both club and high school at the time. So I played freshman soccer there, or on the varsity team there my freshman year, and then I started playing for Boston Bolts in high school, and that's kind of how I got into Northeastern. But back to Westboro, I mean, it was nice growing up there. It was all pretty small town culture, a lot of high school basement parties, that kind of thing. So I definitely enjoyed growing up in Westboro. Met a lot of good friends there that I'm still friends with today.
Yeah, high school basement parties. How come your beer pong game's so bad then?
Yeah, no, I know. It's awful.
Is that where you did?
I didn't learn much.
The Gibbs reach.
The Gibbs reach.
So soccer runs in your family.
Yep.
Your dad played at Westfield State.
Yep.
And your brother played at Endicott.
Yep.
So they must have been decent enough players. What happened to you?
Yeah, so my dad grew up in England, moved here when he was 16, so he just grew up around the sport. It was always his favorite sport. And then he got into coaching back in the U.S. He kind of always did it part-time. Outside of his full-time job, he loved to coach youth soccer, like younger guys. And then when I was growing up, he got involved in a lot of my games. He was my coach for a few years. And then my brother, same deal. He's 4 years older than me, so my dad did a lot of coaching with him. He coached there was a club called FC Puma that we both used to play for in Massachusetts, and then I went to the Bolts and my brother went to NEFC, but at FC Puma my dad coached both of us, and so the three of us used to play pickup together all the time and just kind of travel around the state playing soccer, and that's kind of how we all fell in love with it. And my brother wanted to continue into college, and he knew the coach at Endicott and he liked him, so he went to play at Endicott, and I had Brian Ainscough, who I was well connected with from the Bolts, who kind of got me into Northeastern. So I was absolutely just ecstatic when I could play a Division I sport here. It was great.
Yeah, so who would you say would have been the best player out of your family then? You said your dad came across from England, so he must have been pretty good at that point.
The best, realistically, I mean, probably my brother at the end of the day, because he played all 4 years at Endicott, and it's Division III, but he was like a starter, one of the better players on the team, whereas I was Division I, but I was definitely on the lower end of the spectrum. So I guess you can kind of look at it two ways. So I'd say we were pretty equal. He played in the midfield. I was more of a defender as well, so it's kind of hard to compare.
Yeah, so you're talking about hard to compare there. Connor's not that much older than you, so you must have had a good sibling rivalry that went on between you.
Yep.
Especially playing soccer as kids. How was that? Is that where you learned to kick people?
Yeah, literally that is exactly where I learned. When we were young, we would play a lot of hockey in the driveway. And my brother had all of his friends, his neighborhood friends, who were all 4 or 5 years older than me, would come over. And I was young. I've always been, smaller and younger for my age as it is. So at that point, I was just a little baby, and they were firing pucks at me with no pads on in the hockey net. So that's kind of how I learned like what sports were all about. And I think that's where I got my like aggressive, kind of dirty edge, I guess, if I ever had one.
So you mentioned Brian Ainscough and playing at the Boston Bolts.
Yep.
You started as a young boy when you were there. How was that growing up there?
It was great. Like I said, I was playing for FC Puma until I was about 12, and then the Boston Bolts back then were considered like the best club to be on in Massachusetts. So like I had always, when I was at FC Puma, I was always hearing about like kids who go and play for the Bolts and older guys who were getting full rides to go play college. and guys, going to play Division I, Division II, Division III, all over the country, coming from the Bolts. And I had always heard really good things about Brian Ainscough, both positive, mostly, and some negative, that he's just like a crazy coach to play for.
So that must have suited
and
you
that
then.
that kind of got me fired up. So when I heard that he was the director of coaching over there, I immediately left Puma and played for the Bolts from I was 12, and I played until I was 19, and then I came here.
So at the Bolts, was there anyone that you played with there who went on to be a great success in soccer? Or
Yeah. So my kid that I played with every season, Miles Robinson, he was number 2 in the MLS draft a couple of years ago. I think it was 2017 or 2016?
2017, I think.
2017. And he was just tremendous. Best player I've played with. Harry Schwartz, another guy I played with pretty much all my years there. He was a year older than me, so I overlapped with him a few years, and he's at Hartford Athletic now. And then a bunch of other guys. Alex Ainscough went and played for Stanford. We had Dave Price went to High Point. Some guys went to Harvard. We had really good spread all over the team. But the two notable, the ones that stand out to me, are Miles Robinson and Harry. And Harry Schwartz is my roommate here as well too, so we're close.
Yeah, so you mentioned Miles, that must have been, was he as good as he was now? He's obviously tearing up Atlanta United, Defender of the Year MLS, candidates, and he's been killing it ever since he got in the league there.
Yeah, no, he's super athletic. It was funny because when he was younger, we all used to kind of make fun of him because he never really was that passionate about soccer. He was always a basketball player, and just always the most athletic guy in the room. And he used to kind of brush off soccer as if it wasn't that big of a deal. And then I think as he started to get older, he realized how good he was and how fast he was. And then, he worked on his touch a little bit because that wasn't great when we were younger. And now he's just absolutely, he's unstoppable. He's really good.
Yeah, I think we actually tried to get Miles to come at Northeastern as well.
Yeah, Brian was pushing hard for it.
So you ended up at Northeastern. What other schools were you looking at during that period?
So I was looking at Loyola, Maryland, and then I was also looking at Boston College, Ed Kelly, who I had known playing against. Ed Kelly was the director of coaching at NEFC, and he's a head coach, or was a head coach at Boston College. So NEFC was the Bolts' biggest rivalry, or whatever you want to call it. So we would play NEFC in the State Cup every year, and I think he saw me play in some games there, and he was interested in having me play for him. And then it kind of faded a little bit, and then Brian really wanted me, so I committed to Brian.
So what other kind of schools were pushing for the winning your signature basically? You mentioned Ed Kelly there, and
yep.
BCE. How close were you to signing for it?
I think it was. I committed to Northeastern when I was a sophomore in high school, so Northeastern was a super early decision for me, and I really liked Brian as a coach. Northeastern, the school itself, wasn't my top choice. I probably would have preferred BC. Just the culture over there, I think, would have fit my personality a little bit more. But the the athletics program at Northeastern at the time with Brian, and it was just great, and I couldn't turn up a D1 offer. So Ed Kelly, kind of my senior year, kind of took his offer off the table. I got injured when I was a junior in high school and wasn't playing as much, so I think that offer didn't really stand when I was a senior. So Brian was there all the way.
Yeah, so you mentioned Brian. It must have been a big part of your decision to come to Northeastern.
Mm-hmm.
You came in as part of the 26th best recruiting class in the country that year.
Mm-hmm.
But what was your honest experience like there?
First
got there.
When I first got to Cabot on the first day of preseason, I was scared shitless. I was really nervous. I had been playing with all kids from Massachusetts, and all of a sudden I'm in a locker room with kids from Jamaica, Norway, Scotland, Ireland, England, with really good professional experience, guys like you and Lou and Martin and John and some of these guys, the Jamaican guys, they're just really good players. And so I was definitely it was pretty humbling to just even be in the same room as those guys, because I didn't even know if I was going to be able to play D1 when I was in high school. So I wasn't like, ever expecting to be, the star of the team or anything. I was just happy to be there.
Yeah, so you mentioned like coming in with all those guys. Like, how did you adapt to that culture?
I think the one thing that would set me, kind of apart from other people during the preseason was I would always put 110% in at training, and I was, definitely not the most technical player on the field and definitely not the fastest guy on the field, but I would put 110% in and go the hardest on tackles, and kind of take practices seriously, and I think that definitely helped me in my preseason, kind of helped me fit in, find a place, find a kind of a story for myself to keep on while I played the next few years.
And then obviously Brian was there for the first few years that you were there. A new coach came in and you weren't in his plans. How did that make you feel, like when that happened?
Yeah, no, I was just honestly more angry than anything. I didn't even have time to kind of comprehend. It all happened so quickly. I didn't really have time to even get sad about it, because it was the last, one night I'm a Division I soccer player. I've been playing the game for 18 or 19 years, and then the next day, I believe it was 2016. It was right after Trump won the election that they called me into Cabot, and they said, "Yeah, no, we're letting go of a bunch of players, and you're one of them." So that was definitely like a huge hit to me, and I the first thing that crossed my mind was I want to transfer, I want to go play somewhere else. And then I talked about it with my family, kind of thought about my options, realized that I wouldn't have gotten into Northeastern if it wasn't for soccer, and realized that I was in a really good spot here with friends and with academics, so I ended up staying. But I still to this day kind of think about how my life would have been different if I had transferred somewhere else and kept playing.
Where else were you thinking about transferring then?
So I was looking at San Diego State when that whole thing happened, and then I was looking at a couple Division II and Division III schools where I would, I was going to go there just to play soccer. I didn't really have any interest in those schools for academics, and that's why I ultimately decided to stay at Northeastern.
Was there any schools you got close to that you thought, I'm definitely on the verge of going there, or was it just the thought process that was going through your head? No,
San Diego State, I was talking to the coach there for a little bit, because we had a player, Scats, went there. And that happened that happened the same week, actually. He got cut and I got cut, so he was looking there and I was looking there a little bit, but then, I just realized it wasn't the best move, because that school academically doesn't really compare to Northeastern.
Yeah, so what do you think it was that made the coaches decide that you weren't in his plans? Do you think it was anything specific, or?
I think he came in and had a completely different style in mind as to what he was looking for. So Brian knew exactly what I was like as a player. Brian had seen me playing since I was 12, and he saw me at my worst, and he saw me, when I was playing well. So I think Brian also had a different coaching style than Chris. Brian is a much more European physical style of play, whereas Chris was more trying to think of the right word. Kind of was trying to make it more of a professional atmosphere, more technical, longer training sessions, more technical training sessions. Brian would just get us out and play. So very different styles. I think Chris was looking for a really technical right back who could get up and down the wing, and that wasn't really my style. I tended to just kind of sit back a little bit more. So at the end of the day, I don't really know why it happened, but it did. So
yeah, you mentioned you're someone that always gives like 110%, like giving your all every single day. Do you think there was anything else that you could have tried to do to put yourself in his plans?
Yeah, I think like even just associating myself with different guys on the team, because it was an awkward shift when Brian was no longer the coach, because you kind of had the guys who were recruited by Brian, and then you had the guys who were recruited by Chris, and the team was kind of divided. And I definitely sided with the Brian clan, because those are all my friends that I grew up with on the Bolts, and those are guys that I knew well from here. So I think Bondi saw the division in the team, and I think that was also part of his decision in letting go a group of players who were all loyal to Brian.
So you mentioned that that divide that was across the team. Like, is there anything specific that you can remember, like during your time there? That
I'm trying to. Yeah, I do. I mean, the day that it all happened, we were sitting in the locker room and no one was talking to each other. It was the worst. I mean, the team went from getting along great and having a really good dynamic, going out together on the weekends and after games, to not even wanting to speak to each other because people were so mad about Brian being. Some people were really happy about it, and other people were really angry about Brian not being the coach anymore. So there were definitely times in the locker room where it was really awkward and guys weren't talking to each other and there's some fights and stuff like that.
Yeah, you mentioned the fights as well. Did that ever spill onto like the training field or anything?
I don't remember anything specific with me. I know it did with other players. I know there were some older guys when I was when I was a sophomore, who used to play for the Bolts, who were really upset about what happened, and they were kind of clashing with some of Chris's recruits.
Yeah, so you mentioned all the characters that you played with in that team, like guys from all over the world, like great players, but how were they as people?
Oh, they were all great people. My closest friends at Northeastern are all from the soccer team, and they're all guys that I met freshman year. All very different, all come from different backgrounds, different countries. Made some really good friends. Chris Flores was one of my good friends freshman year. We used to go he's huge into like bodybuilding and lifting competitions and that kind of thing. So
yeah, fingers crossed we can get him on at some point and hear about that.
You should definitely get him on. But he was a big part of my freshman year, and Killian was my roommate. Brian kind of put us together because I think he knew we would get along well, and we've been roommates ever since and best friends here.
Just can't get rid of him.
Yeah, I just can't get rid of this fucker.
So you mentioned about all the players from around the world and you having to adapt when you first came in, like to a more professional kind of scenery. Mm-hmm. Who would you say impressed you the most out of the players in that team?
Well, there were a few. My freshman year when I got in, I'd say you and Lou, I knew you guys had come from really good professional backgrounds. Lou being at Newcastle, and when I was looking at the roster before I went to Northeastern, so I was looking at the roster my senior year in high school, and I remember looking at the backgrounds of some of the players and getting butterflies in my stomach because I was like, holy shit, what am I up against? Martin Nygaard was another one who's really good coming from Norway, and then the two Jamaicans, Castano, I can't remember the other one's name. He was also very, very good players. And Kevin Carvalho came from Pennsylvania, really good player. So there was a lot of competition for freshman year.
Yeah, we had good fun freshman year. I used to love when we had to play against each other.
Yeah.
And every 2 seconds you'd be like, I'm going to kick the shit out of
you. Yeah. So they would do the A team against the B team, and my goal when I was playing against the A team was just to fucking kick someone.
I'll never forget that day at Parsons when you were up against Flores.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you put Flores in the body bag.
Yeah, and Chris called a foul. It wasn't a foul.
Yeah, I agree. That definitely wasn't a foul that game.
No chance.
I was riling you up. I was like, "Go on, Gibbs, go on. You've got this."
I remember that right by the stands at Parsons. That was funny.
Yeah, we had some good fun in that team as well. Like, was there a specific joker in the team? Like, what kind of things? What kind of stuff do you remember that I got up to?
So freshman year, me and Killian would go to what was it, Dougie P?
Yeah, I think that's where we were staying. The
Dougie P apartments with you and Lou and John, and I have vivid memories of those nights. I remember one time we got shut down, we all hid in the bathroom when the RAs were coming and searching for us. And I think Martin somehow got out, or John got out of it or something.
Yeah, as always.
Yeah, fucking John got out of it and we got in trouble. But no, those were really fun nights. And then I remember the beer Olympics we used to do with Balder and Corman and Greeny in their apartment, and Harry. So those were the best years I had at Northeastern, definitely.
Yeah, you remember them? I don't.
Yeah, they're a blur some of those nights.
I think one of the best times during the beer Olympics is when I was like, our team was down by like 10 points or something.
Yeah.
So I started filling the other team's cups up with vodka instead of beer.
Oh yeah.
They were drinking
They're all
it like,
blacked out.
what's going on here?
Yeah, I remember Killian coming back from one of those, and he passed out in the shower for about 20 hours. I had to like save him.
Yeah, we had some good fun. There was a few memorable nights out there.
Yeah.
You and the Stompers out there.
Yeah, the stompers, the boots, the plumber boots.
Yeah, it was a great time, like out in Boston as well. Like especially when we turned when we were all 21.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had plenty of places to go and enjoy ourselves.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good city to be in as a college student for sure.
Yeah, especially when everyone was out together. That was the best part.
Definitely. Like the year Lou met Nikki, I remember that night we were all out together.
Yeah, at Wild Rover and
Yeah.
tried to get you to sing karaoke.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna do it.
So moving on from that, your projects now. So you've started a personalised boat fender cover company, Flexi Fabrics.
Yep.
Tell us about that and how you first got the idea and started it off.
Yeah, so I have always been like really, ever since I was probably a sophomore in high school, I've been really into just entrepreneurship. I'm trying to remember actually of how I think I read the Steve Jobs book when I was in high school, and I just like caught the bug, and ever since I've just been like fascinated by the idea of starting my own business and you know, supporting myself with something that I started rather than going to work for someone else. So in high school I started a company called Fish Inc. Tackle Systems, and we got a patent on a lighted tackle box, and we marketed that for 2 years, and we were actually supposed to sign a licensing agreement. Dick's Sporting Goods wanted to license it, so they would basically take our idea and pay us a royalty on every lighted tackle box that they sold. And right before the licensing agreement was about to go through, a guy from North Carolina with a line of products called the Night Ranger boxes contacted us and said that he'd be he was threatening a lawsuit if we continued because he said that we were infringing upon his patent. So we had to get a patent attorney who, you know, he was a family friend, so the work was all done pro bono, but we got a patent attorney, and he basically ultimately decided that we couldn't go through with the lighted tackle box, and we had to wait until 2022 before his patent expired and we could pick up with that idea again. So, you know, I think that was honestly a blessing in disguise, because I don't think the idea was feasible. Like, tackle boxes are very bulky. The shipping costs on them is really high, really hard to get retail space, and at the same time with flashlights on cell phones now and waterproof headlamps and technology kind of changing, I don't even think the idea is that viable anymore. So I took a break from that, and when I was playing soccer at Northeastern, I wasn't doing any venture, and then so when soccer ended, I kind of started thinking of ideas, and kind of was bouncing around with different ideas, and eventually I decided to go ahead with Flexi Fabrics, which was an idea that Glenn Dunn, Killian Dunn's little brother, had, and he kind of approached me because he knew about Fish Inc., and he approached me and said, like, would you be interested? What do you think of this idea? And so we started Flexi Fabrics, and Flexi Fabrics makes, so every boat has boat fenders that hang off the side of it to protect the boat from docks, rocks, other boats, and you need to put covers on the fenders, or else the plastic on the fender, or the rubber on the fenders gets extremely brittle, and it can tear the paint off the side of your boat and cause a lot of damage. So you put these polyester or neoprene covers on the fenders, and right now the covers just come in black, white, and navy blue, and they're everywhere and they're ugly. So Glenn and I thought, why don't we start putting artwork on these fenders? And so we tooled around with a few designs, and we hired a graphic designer in Upwork from Russia, and we had him do 20 designs, and then we started asking people. And my family lives down in Florida and in Cape Cod, so we're right on the water, and I worked at marinas when I was in high school and into college, so I love boating, love fishing. So I went around and just asked all my friends and everyone I know who lives on the water what they think of this idea, and everyone like really loved it. So we expanded on that, and we now have 120 designs. We sell custom fenders custom fender covers as well. So if you want your own logo or your brand name put on a fender, or your family name, your last name, whatever it is, we can put it on. And the turnaround time on that is just 2 weeks. And then we also have 120 of our own designs that we sell right on our website. And we're going to be doing Amazon as well, starting next week.
What is your website there for?
Flexifabrics.com.
And do you have any social medias that you'd like to?
Yep. So we have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all the usual ones. And those are, Instagram is up and running, and the other ones are, should be up within the next week or so.
So they're all Flexi Fabrics as well, just for anyone that's on the lookout for anything for their boats.
Yep.
And whereabouts do you ship? Is it just the US? Or?
We ship international, so we ship all over the world. And then the custom covers are just within the U.S., but our inventory ships all over the world.
Perfect.
And we also sell the fenders themselves. We don't just sell the covers.
So you mentioned, you started this off, it was an idea from Glenn Dunn. What was your first thoughts when Glenn came to you?
Mm-hmm. When Glenn first came to me and asked me about the idea, I thought it was a really good idea, but I wasn't sure how we would get, because I knew in order to make it an idea that would make money, it's a good idea, but then you have to figure out how you're going to make money with it. I thought the hardest part was going to be able to get a huge range of designs that appealed to a broad enough audience that we could also sell online. So the struggle has been releasing good designs that are going to appeal to a broad enough audience, but that are also specific enough where people will like them. So an example would be we have a Tom Brady goat TB12 bumper. So that obviously is going to appeal to the Northeast. So we can't market that down in Florida. And that can't even go on Amazon because Amazon is too broad. So that will be specifically sold on our website. Another cover we have is the USA flag. So that obviously we can put on Amazon. It's a lot easier to market that.
Yeah, you mentioned all the different designs. You mentioned the Tom Brady goat one, the US flag one. What are the other kind of designs that might appeal to a lot of people out there?
Yeah, so we have politics, we have state flags, we have national flags, which we think will be our biggest seller. We have slogans, we have some music, we have Grateful Dead. We're working on trying to get licensing for NASCAR, NBA, NHL, NFL, MLB. If we can get any of those leagues, that would be it would be huge.
So what were some of the challenges you faced when you first started it off?
So the biggest challenge was just I'm not good with code and with creating websites, so it was creating a website that people would actually go on and respect, and that didn't look like it was made on Wix.
Yeah.
So we hired a coder. We hired 3 coders actually. One was from Pakistan, one was from India. Can't remember where the third one was from, but they were charging extremely low prices to do pretty complex code. So we got all of them on Upwork working for us, and the website was done within a month.
So you mentioned that first challenge of finding someone to be able to code your website. Mm-hmm. What were some of the challenges that you moved on from there? Obviously that must have been one of the first things you wanted, a website so that people can refer to.
Yep. Yeah, so we launched our website with 120 demo designs, and the purpose of that was we weren't carrying inventory on any of the product, but we were offering pre-orders. So the website launched on February 12th, so we're coming up on a month tomorrow, I think, that it'll be up. And that was the first month was all specifically pre-orders, so customers could go in and kind of let us know what designs they liked, what designs they didn't like, place a pre-order if they wanted, and all that pre-order money was placed into an account for our first order, which I'm actually placing on Friday, and that's for 525 fender covers, 300 fenders, and then a bunch of lines and hangers.
So it's obviously took off there. What are your goals for moving on then? Your targets moving forward?
Yeah, so the biggest goal right now is to plow through the inventory that we're ordering. So we have about $3,000 in pre-orders right now, but we're buying $10,000 worth of inventory. So this is the most inventory I've ever carried in my life. So it's a little nerve-wracking because I'm going to be, picking up a pallet of fender covers and fenders from Boston port in a pickup truck and bring them back to my house, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to sell them. So we're going to be selling them on Amazon, on our Shopify account, and then we're doing, and Glenn is mostly responsible for calling into marine stores like Marine Max, marinas around the country, boating and marine supply shops to sell wholesale. So those are the 3 places where we will be selling.
So you mentioned there about going around to wholesalers and stuff. Have you had any kind of pushback so far from them, or have they all been welcoming to the idea?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of pushback. You can, especially with some of the vendors like down south, when they find out that we're not manufactured in the U.S., there can be some pushback because a lot of those guys feel really strongly about keeping manufacturing here. But we really didn't have a choice. Since we're a startup, we had to keep our costs low enough that we're actually profiting. So our covers are made in China, but they're made with probably better materials than if they were made in the U.S. for a lot cheaper.
Yeah, so you've obviously been someone who's like wanted to go into these kind of ventures like from a young age. You mentioned your ventures in college as well. Like, is that something that you developed yourself, or do you think that came from your family background?
Well, my dad and my brother, actually all 3 of them were in sales. My mom worked for Campbell's Soup as a sales rep when she was younger. My brother was at Deli MC and he just transferred to Snowflake. And my dad was in telecom, so he worked at Verizon for like 15 years as a sales rep, and then he went off and started his own telecom company. And so that's kind of, I think, growing up, seeing my dad run a business, like, definitely had a huge impact on what I want to do, because I look at, like, in my eyes, the happiest people are the people that went out and did their own thing and supported themselves versus sitting in a cube all day long from 9 to 5,
following your dreams and going with your ideas.
Yeah, even if it doesn't make you as rich as a really good corporate job would, in my eyes, it's still a lot more fulfilling.
Yeah, because at least you've saw that challenge in front of you and you've tried to take it on and follow the idea that you had and put it into play.
Absolutely.
So cheers for taking the time today, mate. It's been great hearing your journey so far, and it's an exciting venture. So one thing before you go, what is some advice you could offer to future and even current student athletes out there just now going through the college process?
Advice. I would say, if I had any advice to give myself freshman and sophomore, I would say probably and at the time I thought I was taking it seriously enough, but I would say take the athletics as seriously as you can, because you're only going to be given 4 years to play, and 99% of student athletes, whether they're Division I or whatever, aren't going to be able to play after school. So I'd say, if I had to do it over again, I would have. I mean, I don't really think it was any that was in my control. I mean, I did my best to stay on the team, and it was up to Chris in the end, and it was unfortunate. But I would say, current student athletes, just take it seriously, don't fuck around too much, and try to actually make the most of your 4 years, because not many people get to play college sport, whether it's Division I, II, or III. It's really hard to do. So
yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, because time does fly, especially in college sports. 1 minute you're like, oh yeah, I've got 4 years here. Then you blink and it's gone.
Yep. Yeah, no, I can't believe I'm sitting here with coronavirus, just canceled classes, so I just walked out of my last class at Northeastern. So it's kind of an eerie feeling.
Going to the big bad world, son. All right, it's great hearing from you anyway, mate. Thanks very much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks.